Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. This is my second video. I am Dirty Legs and today we are going to talk about BFA. And as this expansion comes to a close for a lot of people at long last, I think a lot of people are excited to be done with this expansion and to move on into Shadowlands. So I'm just going to talk about some things I liked, some things I didn't like, and just have an overall discussion about the expansion. And so let's just get into it. First of all, of course, with every expansion, we have new leveling, so new zones. I didn't level Alliance side. I've never really played it, so I'm kind of be quiet on that topic there because I don't just simply don't know. But Horde side, the leveling was very fun. At least the initial run through of it. There were interesting stories, such as like the political unrest in Zuldazar, and then you had the blood trolls in Nazmir. Vol'dun, kind of sucked, but those two zones, they actually introduced us to characters that would be used throughout the expansion. Unlike the Alliance, whose characters outside of Lady Ashvane were of little consequence to the overall story. Jaina's mom, she had her story in Coltiris, and then after that, never really heard from her. Honestly, granted, this could be a simple lack of the utilization of characters, but it's more likely that the stories of both factions were just two stories with little intertwined in between them. Now, a con to this leveling, of course, was the zone total, with each faction having 3 zones to level in. This made them become very stale very quick, much faster, as opposed to previous expansions. There were no zones that overlapped in leveling due to scaling, so you're left with repeating the same quest over and over again on 12 different characters if you're doing alts. There, like in previous expansions, there had the overlapping leveling zones like Oldham and Twilight Highlands. If you were leveling a lot of alts, you could go to Oldham instead, or you go to Twilight Highlands instead. Same with Storm Peaks and Icecrown, or Zuldrak and Grizzly Hills. Having these additional zones in these expansions left the player with different routes to keep the leveling fresher longer. So it made it more enjoyable. It was like, oh, well, I just did Zuldrak. I'm going to try to Grizzly Hills. Or, man, I really don't want to do Icecrown. Those group quests were horrible, and to be honest, they really were. I'm going to go do Storm Peaks instead. So that kind of thing left the leveling kind of stale, which is why I think a lot of people hate BFA leveling, myself included. Thank goodness for that Ultric Valley little event there, so you could level all your tunes up. Now, next will be the dungeons. While the dungeons themselves were very interesting, they suffer from the same issues as the leveling zones. Until you hit cap, you probably have, I think, 4 dungeons to play in, and then you unlock the rest of them at max level. As opposed to BC and Wrath and even Kata, where dungeons were added every level, every other level. And if you wanted to power level through dungeons, it became very, very boring and very, very stale. And it's really sad because the dungeons themselves are cool. And if you compare them to here, I mean, all you have to do is look at the dungeon journal. In the dungeons tab, I mean, there are, what's that, 11 dungeons for BFA. Was that 13 for Legion? Well, WAD, alright, that's fine. Mists only had 9. And then Kata had, was it 14? And then Wrath had, was that 16? And then, BC had like an additional 16. And then, of course, Classic had a billion. So again, it seems like they're shortening the amount of dungeons they have, and then they're trying to supplement that with Mythic Plus. And I really don't think that that's the answer, because you can add little wrinkles to certain dungeons, but at the same rate, they're also still the same dungeon. And again, it becomes more and more stale. And they've kind of moved away from adding dungeons in expansions. They didn't add one this expansion. I'm sure they had like the 2 max level ones, the King's Rest and the Siege of Borealis. but those were already there at launch. They didn't add like a Cathedral of the Eternal Night. Not a really good example. That dungeon wasn't very cool, but you know what I mean. Now we're gonna head into the features now. Of course, the big touted two features of this expansion that they kept stressing were going to be so cool were the Warfronts and the islands. Now, Warfronts, normal's lame. I mean, you can just AFK and it's done. And I think an additional part of that is there is no in-game story to lead up to the first Warfront. Like, unless you read the Before the Storm novel, you don't know why you're there. Now, this was corrected with the Dark Shore Warfront, and you kind of got like a quest line to introduce why you're there, and I think that was good and that was interesting. And it was a vast improvement over the Arathi one. I think the actual Warfront, the second Warfront, the Dark Shore Warfront, was vastly better than the Arathi Warfront, but still, on normal, they're both pretty bad. There's no real gameplay. I mean, once the players, obtained any type of LFR gear or even these OP World Quest gear, like I just got a 440 trinket today for doing 3 shell game quests. Like, I shouldn't be able to do that, but that's another video. And they just become AP farm for the weekly contribution quests, which actually ended up not being a thing because it's kind of impossible that all the servers change their status at the same time if all the servers have different populations. So I'm not sure how that fill the bar that you do to contribute is actually not a thing. Anyway, islands, again, normal ones, of course, are snooze fests. Heroics are a little bit harder. But again, once you get this OP gear that you honestly shouldn't be getting, they become snooze fests as well. I didn't do PvP ones. You can't find anybody to do them with you unless you have buddies. Mythic ones, again, you have to have buddies to do that, and nobody talks to anybody in this game anymore, so it's kind of hard to do that unless you're in a really good guild. Which is sad, but it is what it is, I guess. Islands themselves, the idea on paper is cool, just like Warfronts. The idea on paper is cool. Going to an island and this island's infested with weird stuff you haven't seen in a long time, like black dragons and void creatures. Like, that's cool. But the objective of every island was the same, and that's not interesting. They could have done so many cool things with these islands, and it's really sad that they kind of dropped the ball on them. You could make the reward Azerite, but you don't have to make the objective of the island collecting Azerite. You could have made it, I don't know, break into this castle and kill the king and steal all of his Azerite. And you're competing with the other faction team. That would have been cool. Excuse me. Or, helping out a village under attack from whatever, and then their gift to you is their Azerite. And then the other side that's attacking the village is the other faction. That would have been cool. Making the objectives different than just mining Azerite would have been a much better conceived plan than just merely, go mine all of it. Or, these crocodiles give it to you. Like, it just really wasn't. It was a lost opportunity. I'll say that. And then, of course, we have the big giant elephant in the room, is Azerite. Now, first of all, Azerite on paper is a good idea. All right? It's talent points or talents that you don't have to give to people permanently, which is what Blizzard doesn't want to do. They don't want to give you any more talents in your little talent tree. They are done with this. They don't want to do it anymore. I think they've made that clear, because we haven't gotten any talents in it'll be 3 expansions. And I think they just don't want to do that anymore. And I think that if they could remove talents, they would. But I think that's just a super ingrained part of this game that they won't actually do that. Um, so this Azurite was kind of a supplement for that. It was something they could give you, but it was also something they could take away from you. They were cool things that you unlocked as you leveled your necklace. Cool. Just like the artifact weapon. Awesome. Cool. But the problems with it, some of these, um, like Azurite powers or whatever, were garbage. Like there was a clear, super good one, and then there was a clear really bad one, like Gathering Storm for warriors. Like it was just stupid. Like it had like one niche thing you could do with it, and then after that, it was like, oh, you're just stupid for picking that. And then some were entirely OP, like back in the day when the game first came out, when BFA first launched. Thunderous Blast was just like, if you have Azurite without Thunderous Blast, you're garbage. Um, and it simply became a, well, what do I want to do with my character? And then pick the one that I like best to, hey, head to Blood Mallet and click the best one. Now, I know that will always exist in the Ultra Mega Cutting Edge, but it shouldn't be to the point where your character doesn't function nearly as well without the right Azurite traits. Like this Arms Warrior here, if he doesn't have Test of Might, he's garbage. Like if you look on Blood Mallet now, I think it is head and shoulders above the rest of the Azurite traits. Not even close. I think it's like 3 times better than the next one. And it's things like that it's like, oh, well, I have to pick that one. There's no, well, maybe I wanted to do Gathering Storm or Seismic Wave for some reason, and maybe I wanted to choose those, but I can't because Test of Might is so much better, and none of them really affected your gameplay that much. I mean, granted, there were a few, but most of them didn't. Like, I mean, Test of Might kind of does, but Gathering Storm doesn't. Like, you just do more damage during Blade Storm. Cool. Test of Might at least makes you rage dump, and to generate a whole lot of rage and sync that with your, with like Skull Splitter and spamming Slam to dump a bunch of rage, and then you have a bunch more strength to use on your next Mortar Strike and things like that. That's an interesting one. Most of them weren't like that. Most of them were, oh, well, this has a chance at one point in time to give you more damage. It sounds like when the Essence system came out, that is what the original Azurite system, what they envisioned it to be. They wanted it to be cool, interesting items that you could actually click on and use as you wanted. It should have been more self-deterministic, not RNG based. There's going to be some RNG, but not entirely RNG. These are, most of them, I'd say 90% of all the Azurite traits are all RNG based. They are. But the essences aren't. You actually have to click them. There are some passive things that you can use in the other rings and stuff like that. Like on my warrior here, I don't make fun of them. I have no reason to farm these. Like my main one here is Memory of Lucid Dreams because it gives me all that rage regeneration for 15 seconds. I click that when I want. And then I can couple that with my Test of Might. I pop my Warbreaker, and then I click that, and then I just spam Slam and Mortal Strike, and then generate as much strength as I can, use my Overpower procs, and then hit my Mortal Strike, and I just murder people. That's cool. That's interesting. It changes how you play. It changes how you think about when you're going to push buttons. Things that give you extra haste at random points don't. And another good example is Breath of the Dying. This one here, I use its passive one, but its main one is it's a big hit. It's a big hitter button for a lot of classes that don't have big hitter buttons. And it can also be used as an execute if you use it properly. Again, it makes you think about what you have to do and and how you're supposed to use these things together in synergy with other things. And I think those are what make the essences themselves more interesting than the Azurite. Its whole obtaining them and upgrading them is completely bonkers, especially the Nazjatar ones, and I think they did fix that a little bit in 8.3, but they just need to be account bound. I mean, Just do it. I mean, I don't know what the big deal is. Um, so the next one, of course, is going to be the raids, and as always, they're phenomenal. They're beautiful. They have interesting bosses. Again, we all know that not all raid bosses can be winners. You know, they have to have a DPS check boss, they have to have a heal check boss, and there always seems to be this really dumb mechanics boss um, that people always hate, like Zool, and then the soccer boss. And I love that. If you watch Preach's videos on it, it's actually really funny to watch people play it. Um, but you know, and Preach's other video about how this off was actually a letdown is actually really interesting. So go take a look at that. But overall, I think the instance team, if that's what they're called, or the encounter team or the raid team, the people that make the instances and raids, are always top notch. They're the best in the business. They know how to make them, and they make them very well. So of course they were always ahead of the encounter team and the art team are carrying this game, and I don't think people realize that. Um, so they're always on top. Now, the third thing about BFA was, of course, the gearing. Um, Again, I think the power creep is getting out of hand, and I have another video planned on that. But the power gains that characters get today through trivial things like world quests is something that has to be reined in. Like, I got this trinket here, this 440, 521 strength, and some random verse proc, with a socket for doing 3 shell game quests or a turtle made it to the water quests. Like, I I should not be able to get that. That is that heroic level Nyalotha? I think it is. Nyalotha loot mount normal. Okay, it is almost normal level Nyalotha gear. Like, it's better than LFR gear. Like, I can go through war quests and get gear better than the LFR stuff. Then why am I doing LFR? Like, Blizzard's almost shooting themselves in the foot when it comes to LFR, because they're getting better gear outside of LFR. So why do LFR? I mean, I'll do it one time for the story, but I'm not gonna do it more than once. Um, I should not be able to get raid quality gear from doing emissaries. I shouldn't. Nobody should. Um, it has ruined the raid community. It has ruined guilds, because you have no reason to talk to anybody if I can get the same gear that you can get without speaking to a soul. And that's what I do. I mean, I have no reason not to do it. I mean, I'm going to take full advantage of that opportunity until they take it away from me. I mean, that's just how it is. So, my final thoughts. BFA, on a scale of 1 to 10, I'd probably give it a 5. I think for some reason it felt a little rushed out of the gate. I think they were really, 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 really trying to push it out, and I don't know why, because Legion was so well received. I think a lot of folks really did like Legion more than they let on. I mean, there were some issues with it, like the legendaries and stuff like that, but overall, I think people really liked it. There was a lot to do. Excuse me. There was a lot to do. And the story was just a little disjointed. Again, going back to the Alliance versus Horde stories that never really connected until, I mean, the war campaigns kind of connected a little bit here and there, but overall, I don't think they connected at all. There were 2 different stories in 3 different zones, and even from what I've watched in videos of people playing the Alliance side, the 3 zones really don't even connect to each other at all. I mean, they lightly do from what I've heard, but the Horde side, on the other hand, they all connect into one story about how, Mithrax gets released and then Gahoon wakes up. And then the Alliance side just doesn't have that. And I think it almost seems like 2 different sets of people made these zones. I think they had one team make the Alliance side and one team make the Horde side, and you can see the artistic and creative differences between the two teams. Which I mean that's whatever, but you can just see the vast difference between the two. And I think Nyalotha and N'Zoth were kind of a letdown. I mean, Preach just released a video on the actual N'Zoth fight and how he was shocked at how simple it was. Um, it was just he said the first three phases were the same thing over and over again. You killed the same guy, the same like a mob, like mini boss or whatever. And I mean, from what it looks like, yeah, it looks like it's really anticlimactic. And then Nyalotha itself, I mean, they've been teasing old god stuff since the puzzle box of Yogg-Saron, and that's Wrath, right? And for it to be just a raid, which again, our team made it beautiful. The bosses are cool. I mean, with the exception of what it looks like in the Zoth to not be that way, but they've been teasing this since Wrath. They've had all these little secrets and these whispers, and which is cool stuff to watch these people kind of theory craft on it and make little conspiracies about it. I like watching like pyromancer stuff. That guy is on another plane of existence, and he's actually really interesting to listen to. But you can't tease. You teased all of this stuff, and it ends up just being a one-off raid boss. Like, really? That's it? That's all I'm getting for, what is it? Wrathy was brought in. Deathwing was his servant. I mean, Old Gods were in Mists. WoD, whatever. Legion, I mean, that fight with the Legion basically was instigated by N'Zoth in order to actually get rid of his biggest enemy, in order to actually, rise, if you will. I mean, all of this led up to it. Ajara led up to it. And then it's just what seems to be a pretty lame raid boss, and I think that's really sad. But honestly, it seems like the Blizzard team has moved on. They're done with it, and I mean, you can say what you want about what's going on inside of Activision Blizzard or whatever, but I mean, I think they're just moved on and they're ready to go. I think they're ready for Shadowlands to be here. 8.3 is I think it's a good send off. All things considered, I think it's the best patch of this expansion, and it's really not saying too much. I think over the course of the expansion, the patches have gotten better, and I think 8.3 is the pinnacle. But yeah, I'd give it a 5. It was, it was okay. I mean, was it better than WoD? Yeah, it was better than WoD. No, I've never seen so many people leave than they did in WoD, and I think they all came back for Legion. And so everybody's like, "Oh, it's back," and then a lot of them left. Not nearly as many as people that left in WoD. And I think everybody's just comparing the two, and I don't think it's close. WoD, like 2 raid tiers. That's it. No new area except Tanan Jungle. I mean, there's no comparison here. BFA was better than WoD, but it still doesn't mean it wasn't. It still doesn't mean it was great. It was a letdown in a lot of ways, but it also, it had good raids, it had good dungeons, it had good ideas. They were just, I'm not sure what happened, but the ideas themselves, I think, were good, but they were just poorly implemented. So, that's my thoughts on BFA. I'm excited to see what Shadowlands has, but I'm also a little leery. I'll make a video about that too. And that's all I got. If you like the video, like it, subscribe, comment, do all that good stuff. Put my Twitter in the link in the description. Follow me there. I have like 2 tweets and no followers because, I'm that guy. So, if you guys like it, and I will see y'all next time. Have a good one.